Hello everybody, it's Michael McManus, and today I'm going to be talking to you about crime, law and order, and how I feel that we can deal with it. Now, I'm actually the paper writer for the UK Independence Party's policy paper on law and order, which you can download from the UK Independence Party website at www.ukip.org. Now, what brought me into UKIP in the first place was actually concern about crime, because I looked at all the mainstream parties and I thought, well, they just don't want to deal with it. I mean, you had the Tories who were soft on crime, Labour who were soft on crime, and the Lib Dems who were soft on crime. And I don't believe that being soft on crime is an appropriate way to protect the public and protect law and order and society itself. I think you need to be firm and fair. So what would I do to restore law and order in this country of ours? Well, the first thing we need to do, and this is a bit of a no-brainer, is we need to pull out of the European Human Rights Act, pull out of the European Union altogether. And having pulled out of that act, we can then start to properly punish criminals. At the moment we can't, because the Human Rights Act makes so many protective measures for criminals that by the time you've danced around those measures, you can't actually properly punish the criminals. And also as well, it's a door that criminals can knock on to have their increasingly obscene and over-the-top demands for their rights to be enforced. For example, you've got David Neilson, who's a convicted sex killer who's killed between 12 and 15 young men in London in the 1980s. He was found in his prison cell with violent pornography. And the prison governor very sensibly said, I'm going to confiscate this. Using taxpayers' money, he then went to the European Court of Human Rights and said the decision to stop me having porn in prison was inhumane and violated my human rights, and the European Court agreed. And that just sums up British law and order today. You've got a convicted sex killer can go to the European courts, and the European courts are on his side and not the side of his 15 victims or the 15 victims' family members or the wider society that he can now prey on, because the European Court of Human Rights has also ruled that life without parole is a human rights violation as well. So we can't execute violent criminals and we can't keep them in for life. And all this stuff you get about, oh, life should mean life. Well, it doesn't matter, because if we're in the European Union we can't have life without parole, so we need to pull out of that. Another thing I do to restore law and order is build more prisons. You know, we constantly hear from the political elite about, oh, actually we can't build more prisons because there's not the money, yet we can find money for ridiculous things, and we can also find money for their lavish expenses and second homes of politicians. I think we can spend the money better elsewhere. We need to build more prisons, because one of the primary problems we've got in Britain at the moment is we've got the law and orders that say, oh no, don't send these people to prison, there's prison overcrowding. So criminals can commit crime safe in the knowledge that they won't get sent to prison, so they can continue to prey on us. We need more prisons. It's basic stuff. If you read the book A Land Fit for Criminals, which I've actually got here, A Land Fit for Criminals actually points out that if you lock people up, it's called preventative detention, they can't victimise the public because they're locked up, and we need to go back to preventative detention. A second thing we need to do is reintroduce the concepts of natural justice and common sense when it comes to fighting crime. You know, we can't rely on pie-in-the-sky human rights ideology or the notion that it's all society's fault, and until we make society completely perfect, we couldn't possibly punish criminals. Now, I don't believe that society creates criminals. I believe that criminals prey on society. You know, in our society you've got free healthcare, free education, and a law and order system that at least originally was quite good. And it means criminals still choose to prey on the weak, old women, young kids with iPods, etc. And we need to make Britain a terrifying place to be a criminal. You look at countries like Singapore, you look at these countries that have cracked down on criminals and have created very, very advanced and stable democracies where violent crime is very, very rare, because they punish their criminals, they lock them up, they put them away for a long time, they give them heavy fines, and they don't dance around what is the criminal's human right, what would the criminal really like. If you build a justice system on the criminal's wants and wishes, you don't have a justice system. You have a wish list for criminals, and the rest of us can go to hell as far as the political elite are concerned. So I want to see tough fight to protect the victims of crime. First of all, pull out of the EU. Secondly, introduce proper punishments now that we're out of the EU. Thirdly, is to have a larger police force with less tape. Fourthly, more prison places. And fifthly, the entire justice system has to be centred on the ethic of common sense and natural justice and protection of the public.